Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Stormruler, Sacred Rites, and Black Magick out October 14th on Napalm Records. The album has 20 tracks, 74 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. They are an American black metal band. If this is your first time listening to the band and you're looking at this track listing and you see 20 songs, you're perhaps taken back a little bit by it. 74 minutes, it's a long album, and normally that means difficult to digest. Well, there's only actually 10 songs on this record, but every song comes with an intro track. They did that in their previous album, and they're repeating the formula on this brand new record. When you create an album with this design, with this unique approach, you're able to do two things. On one hand, if the listener is going from first song to last song, really enjoying the full fluidity of the album, everything that the album has to offer, you're not just getting the tracks, but you're getting a little bit of the character development that comes into those intros that allows you to better digest and better dissect the songs themselves. And this is an important aspect of listening to this record. You're able to dive a lot deeper into these songs, therefore diving a lot deeper into the overall album. You're able to get more out of it, and with more comes a better understanding of what the record is all about. If you decide to listen to these songs out of the context of the album without those intros, you still get what the song is all about. You still get the essence of the track, but you don't get that character development. You don't get that origin story that the intros help to put into the forefront, making the sequence into the song one that is easy to understand, that is easy to grasp. You're coming from a place of knowledge, but you still feel what the tracks are all about. You still get the essence of the songs. You're still able to enjoy them. So this record gives you two very different, unique ways of approaching the record, perhaps one more unique than the other, but you're able to get a very similar experience out of both. One just comes with better understanding than the other. Now, as far as the soundscape is concerned, the record has that dark and grimy black metal sound through and through. The part that I enjoy the most about the sound of this album is that the album is able to sound dark, grimy, but the production behind it cleans up a little bit of those elements, giving it more pop, giving it a little bit of a bigger impact, allowing the album to sound better all around. This doesn't mean that the record is overly produced, because it's not. It still feels raw, it still sounds raw, very driven. It has a very interesting push from start to finish. It's an album that finds the fine line between traditional black metal sounding records and more modern, better polished albums. This album is neither or. It's a little bit of in between, and you're able to see the beauty that comes with a record that is not defined by where the genre started or by where the genre currently is, but rather by what they wanted the experience to be. So I enjoy the sound of this record. I just wish this album had a little bit more oomph. And that oomph perhaps could have came from the drums. The drums are there, but they're not there in a way that really grounds the record, that gives the record substance, that gives the record texture, that makes the album feel slightly bigger or at least slightly wider. This album sounds very narrow because the drums don't have that power, the drums don't have that strength. Everything that you feel is coming from the guitars, or at least the guitars overpower the drums and become the main driving force cutting through on every single track. There are a few songs where the guitars pick up a little bit thickness, and with that thickness and a little bit extra heaviness on the drums, the songs feel a little bit more substantial. But all around, the experience that you're going to get at the end of the record after going through these 20 tracks is an album that has a very narrow path. It drives, it has force, it has aggression, it has darkness, it has everything a black metal album should have, but the path feels super narrow, very constrained. And I wanted the album at times to breathe a little bit better, to have more of a wider path, more of a wider road. If the drums are not helping to create that wider path, then the guitars at times need some extra thickness, and I don't think they need to go down that road. I honestly like the guitar sound on this record. I like that driving force. I like that sound that really pierces through. I think that's such an important aspect of Stormruler, such an important aspect of the sound on this album that if you start to tweak with it, you lose a little bit of the fingerprint of the band, you lose a little bit of the DNA of the band. But having the drums create the path, having the drums allow the overall margins of this record to be a little bit wider would make the album feel even more powerful, would make the album feel even more aggressive, even more relentless. Now, as far as the vocals are concerned, I love the execution, I love the tonality, I love the production. They feel perfect for an album that has that sort of guitar sound that really drives through, that really cuts like a knife. The vocals feel deep within the sound experience. They don't come over the top, they're not behind the sound, they're somewhere in the middle, and they permeate. They move forward, they move backwards, they have a little bit of life within them, and they're not stagnant, they're not still, they're not linear. They're linear in terms of what they offer, but they don't come across linear in terms of the impact that they have with the sound into the songs themselves. And that is an important element. If you're going to create an album that has this sort of atmosphere, this sort of sound, you have to have the vocals in the right spot, you have to have the vocals in the right mix in order for you to feel the atmosphere that the album creates. And this is not an overly atmospheric album, but it still creates a certain essence, and one of the elements that helps that essence come to life or become better defined is definitely the vocal performance. All around, the album is a little bit too big. I understand the idea of having the intro tracks. I love the idea of the intro tracks. I love the execution of that idea, but 20 tracks, 74 minutes, you're going to lose some listeners throughout this entire experience. You're demanding too much of a listener these days to stay connected for 74 minutes. This album could have met its goals at 50 minutes. I really feel like that would have been the perfect time frame for the playability of the record not to be affected. This is a great sounding album. It's an album that has great elements, obviously could always be better, and I think this is a band that's still finding their footing, they're still finding their place, so I assume that in the future, as they evolve, so will the sound around them. But understanding the listener, understanding what listeners these days are looking for, you have to be aware of that when you put a record together. And I really feel like one of the things, perhaps the thing that impacts this album on a negative side the most, it's actually its length, not the sound, not the vocals, not anything else. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with To Bear the Twin Faces of the Dragon, a very driven and dark song. The drums laid the path. They really create a nice foundation for this track, and they allow the guitars and vocals to drive through it. One of the songs that has a little bit more of a connection in terms of all the moving pieces and creates better shapes for guitars and drums and vocals and how they interact with one another. The song still feels very narrow, it still feels very driven. This is not one of the few tracks on the album where the drums have a little bit more oomph, but you start to see some of the shapes of how these songs are being put together. And this track, while not necessarily getting to that finish line, it allows you to see that you're very close to it. I like the way it's put together. I like the acoustic melodic bridge that the track has, allows some brightness to come into a song that overall feels extremely dark. So it's a nice moment of clarity within the haze of darkness that this track provides. Next we have 10 Heralds, 10 Desolations. This is one of those songs that the drums offer a little bit more power. And with more power comes this overall sensation that the track is a little bit thicker, that has more substance and more texture. Important element because it makes that road a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to navigate down. The guitars still drive, but they don't have that narrowing sound to them anymore because the drums are helping complement it, and the overall sound experience feels slightly bigger. There is definitely more volume with this song. The guitars also have some thickness to them, not consistently, but they bring in some thickness here and there, and that is important once again to create that much wider path. Now the vocals sound demonic on this track, which they add tons of darkness. They create an ambiance that's really important for a song like this, and that ambiance is something that's really true throughout the entire record. The vocals on this album are phenomenal. Perhaps this song you're able to see them impact a little bit more directly into the overall feel, into the overall experience that the song offers. A very powerful track all around. Last but not least, the Shaded Vlasian Forest. Now this track has incredible guitar sound all around. The drums help define the movement, the tempo of the song, how this song is trying to transport the listener. The vocals help guide the listener through that movement, through that fluidity that the track offers. But the guitar sound all around stands out. You really feel connected with it from beginning all the way to the end. You see more texture coming out of the guitars. They're not as driven, they're not as linear, they're not as one-dimensional on this song as they are predominantly throughout the entire record, which gives the track more life, more energy. You're still able to get darkness into the track, you're still able to get that sense of being crouched into the song, but you're also able to give the song a little bit more of a heartbeat, a little bit more life by having the guitars have more substance within their sound, within their impact, within their execution. A track that at the end of the day becomes guitar driven, either you like it or not. That is the case with this song. That's the element that you're going to hold on to from the beginning all the way to the end, because they just offer you different sides of what they can do on an album like this, but all inside a single track. This is it, Stormruler with Sacred Rites and Black Magick out October 14th on Napalm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.